Everyone thinks transformation requires intensity. It doesn't. Everyone thinks big change requires big action. But neuroscience actually shows the opposite. Tiny rituals done consistently rewire your brain faster than dramatic overhauls ever will. Transformation doesn't happen when you reinvent your life. It happens when you repeat something small long enough that your identity shifts. Let me show you the science behind that. As entrepreneurs, we love momentum. We love breakthroughs. We love the idea of reinvention. But intensity is not the same thing as sustainability. If you've ever tried to completely change your morning routine, rebuild your entire productivity system, or force yourself into a new version of yourself overnight, you've probably also felt the crash that follows. That's not because you lack discipline. It's because the brain resists sudden disruption, especially when your nervous system is already carrying the weight of entrepreneurship. Let's talk about what's actually happening neurologically. Your subconscious mind represents the part of your consciousness that you no longer have to actively think about. Driving, locking the door, brushing your teeth, these behaviors become automatic because they've been repeated so often, you no longer need to think about them while you're doing them. Repetition programs the subconscious. So when we want to start or stop a behavior, we must interrupt an automatic pattern and introduce a new one. This is where neuroplasticity comes in. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman explains that repeated behaviors strengthen neural pathways, making those behaviors easier and more automatic over time. What fires together, wires together. Every thought and emotion you experience has a corresponding chemical process in the body, which means when you repeat a small action consistently, you are not just forming a habit. You are literally reshaping your brain. In Tiny Habits, BJ Fogg explains that there are only three ways to create lasting change: have an epiphany, change your environment, or change your habits in tiny ways. I've experienced all three. Moving multiple times in my life gave me plenty of opportunities to start fresh, but moving isn't realistic for most people, and epiphanies are unpredictable. So that leaves us with the most accessible, sustainable option: tiny habits. Small shifts repeated daily. For me, transformation didn't come from massive reinvention. It came from small structural and relational shifts. Making my bed, getting ready even if I wasn't going to see anyone, practicing gratitude daily. These actions changed my momentum. Before that, my default setting was constantly scanning for what needed improvement. And left unchecked, that led to judgment, frustration, focusing on what was lacking, arguments, and overall disharmony. When we repeatedly focus on what's wrong, we strengthen neural pathways around lack. We literally use our energy to create the opposite of what we want. So when I began intentionally creating small wins first thing in the morning, I began reinforcing evidence that things were working. That shift in focus changed everything. Not overnight, but steadily. And over time, it created a foundation that allowed me to show up consistently in my business and in my life with steadiness and fortitude. The deeper transformation wasn't behavioral, it was identity based. When you do small things you're proud of consistently, you begin to see yourself as the kind of person who does those things. And when identity shifts, behavior becomes automatic. You no longer force yourself to journal. You become someone who reflects. You no longer force yourself to regulate. You become someone who practices mindfulness. This is why daily rituals matter. This is why a mindfulness practice works. This is why journaling for self-reflection builds leadership capacity for solopreneurs, because your business will always reflect who you believe you are, and identity is the most efficient way to create sustainable business growth. Let me give you something practical. BJ Fogg calls this the Maui habit. After you wake up and put your feet on the floor, you say, "It's going to be a great day." Ever since I read that book, I've done it. And I added my own layer. Before I even get out of bed, I think of as many things as I can that I'm grateful for. Silently, I pray, "Thank you for a good night's rest. Thank you for my babar and for our health and our family. Thank you for another day." As a child, I was always told to count my blessings, and that stuck with me. So instead of reinventing myself, I leveraged what was already working. This is how sustainable change happens. You build from what's familiar and gently expand. This is also why the four-step daily flow practice begins with tuning in through gratitude. Because gratitude is not fluffy, it's neurological. Gratitude increases dopamine and serotonin, the neurotransmitters targeted by many antidepressants. It shifts your internal chemistry. It builds momentum, and momentum creates consistency. Tiny habits, repeated daily. As solopreneurs, we don't just manage tasks, we manage energy. If you want to prevent entrepreneur burnout, if you want work-life balance, if you want an aligned business that doesn't feel heavy, you don't need intensity. You need repetition. Small rituals that stabilize your nervous system and strengthen the identity of the leader you are becoming. If you want to practice these tiny rituals inside a supportive container with other solopreneurs who understand this journey, that's exactly why the K&L Collab exists. It's a place to build sustainably, to regulate together, to grow in community. If this resonates, you're warmly invited to join the priority list. The link is in the description. Remember, transformation doesn't require intensity, it requires intention. I'll see you in the next video.